The Children of Lir. Once upon a time, in a land of rolling green hills and misty lakes, there lived a kind king named Lir. He had 4 beautiful children, Fionuala, the eldest, with hair like spun gold, and her 3 younger brothers, Iod, Fiatra, and Khan. They lived in a castle of gray stone beside a shimmering lake, where the water sparkled like scattered diamonds in the morning light. Every evening, King Lir would gather his children around a great stone fireplace, and they would tell each other stories while the wind hummed gently outside. The children loved to run through the meadows, picking wildflowers, and watching the rabbits hop between the hedgerows. Their laughter rang across the valley like tiny silver bells, and all the animals of the forest would come closer just to listen. It was a happy home, full of warmth and music, and the kingdom was at peace. Now, King Lir married again, and his new wife was called Awif. Awif was beautiful, with dark flowing hair and eyes the color of the sea. But she was lonely, you see, for the children loved their father so dearly that Awif sometimes felt left out. She wished, more than anything, that she could be the center of someone's world. One quiet afternoon, while watching the children play by the lake, a strange thought crept into her heart. She waved her hand over the glassy water and whispered an enchantment, and in a swirl of silver mist, the 4 children transformed into 4 magnificent white swans. Their feathers gleamed like moonlight, and their wings stretched wide and strong. But the moment she saw them gliding across the lake, so graceful and so beautiful, Awif felt sorry in her heart. She had not meant to be unkind. She simply had not understood how to ask for love. And now, the magic had been set free, and only time and kindness could undo it. But oh, what a wondrous thing it was to be a swan. Fionuala spread her great white wings, and her brothers followed, and together they rose into the sky above Ireland. They soared over emerald valleys and winding rivers that glittered like ribbons of silver. They flew above ancient forests where the trees whispered secrets to one another, and over little villages where chimney smoke curled into the evening air. The wind beneath their wings was soft and steady, carrying them gently wherever they wished to go. At night, they would land upon still, moonlit lakes and tuck their heads beneath their wings, listening to the frogs singing and the gentle lapping of water against the shore. Fionuala would sing to her brothers in a voice so sweet and clear that even the stars seemed to lean closer to listen. And though they missed their father, they found wonder in every corner of the sky. Ireland had never looked so beautiful as it did from above, painted in shades of green and gold and twilight blue. Seasons turned like the pages of a storybook. The swans glided through misty mornings and golden afternoons, through soft spring rains and crisp autumn breezes. Wherever they went, the people of Ireland loved them. Farmers would leave breadcrumbs by the lake shore. Fishermen would row gently so as not to disturb them. Children would sit on mossy banks and listen to Fionuala's magical song, which could make the saddest heart feel peaceful. And all the while, Awif worked quietly to undo her enchantment. She traveled to the oldest fairy mound in all of Ireland and asked the ancient spirits for help. She gathered moonflowers that only bloomed at midnight and dew from the first morning of spring. She whispered words of kindness into the wind, hoping they would reach the swans wherever they flew. And slowly, gently, the magic began to soften, like ice melting in the warmth of the sun. Then one evening, as the sun dipped below the hills and painted the sky in shades of rose and amber, a warm, golden light spread across the lake. The 4 swans felt a tingling in their wings, a gentle warmth that wrapped around them like a blanket. And slowly, softly, their feathers melted away like morning dew, and there stood Fionuala, Aod, Fiatra, and Khan. children once more, with rosy cheeks and bright shining eyes. King Lear came running down the hill, his arms open wide, and he gathered all 4 children into the biggest, warmest hug in all of Ireland. A waif stood nearby, tears of joy upon her cheeks, and the children hugged her too, for they understood that she had worked so hard to bring them home. That night, the whole kingdom celebrated with music and feasting, and when the stars came out, one by one, the children of Lir climbed into their soft, warm beds, and Fionnuala sang one last gentle song, a lullaby that floated out the window and drifted across the lake, where the swans of Ireland dipped their heads and slept beneath the moon. And all was well, and all was peace. Jack and the Beanstalk. Once upon a time, in a little cottage at the edge of a green and misty valley, there lived a boy named Jack. Jack was a kind and curious boy with freckles on his nose and a smile that could warm the coldest morning. He lived with his mother, and though they did not have much, their home was cozy and full of love. One soft spring day, Jack set off down the winding path to the village market. The hedgerows were dotted with tiny white flowers, and the birds sang slow, sweet songs from the branches above. Along the way, Jack met a gentle old woman sitting on a mossy stone. She held out her hand, and in her palm lay 5 small beans that shimmered with a light all their own, green and gold and violet, like captured starlight. The old woman smiled. She said the beans were magical, and that they would grow into something wonderful if planted with care and kindness. Jack thanked her, tucked the beans safely into his pocket, and walked slowly home through the quiet, dewy evening. That night, Jack planted the 5 beans in the soft, dark earth beside the cottage. He patted the soil gently and whispered a little wish. Then he went inside, drank a cup of warm milk, and fell fast asleep. When morning came, Jack rubbed his eyes and looked out the window, and there, stretching up and up and up into the clouds, was the most magnificent beanstalk he had ever seen. Its trunk was thick and green, wrapped in spiraling vines, and its great broad leaves fanned out like steps, one after another, all the way into the misty sky above. Tiny flowers bloomed along its length, pale blue and soft pink, and dewdrops clung to every leaf, catching the early light like little lanterns. Jack's mother came to the window and gasped with wonder. The beanstalk swayed gently in the breeze, and somewhere high above, hidden in the clouds, something was humming a deep, slow tune. Jack looked up, took a deep breath, and began to climb, one leaf at a time, higher and higher, into a world above the world. Above the clouds, Jack found a land of soft, rolling mist and golden light. Everything was large and slow and quiet. The flowers were as big as umbrellas. The mushrooms were as tall as houses. And there, in the middle of it all, stood a great stone castle covered in sleepy moss and trailing ivy. Jack tiptoed inside. The halls were warm and dim, lit by candles that flickered gently in their holders. And in the biggest room, in the biggest chair, sat the biggest person Jack had ever seen, a giant with a long red beard and heavy, drooping eyelids. The giant was not scary at all. He was simply very, very sleepy. He yawned a yawn so wide that the candle flames wobbled, and he muttered something about needing a nap. On the table beside him sat a golden harp that played the softest music all by itself, a slow, dreamy melody that made the whole castle feel like the inside of a lullaby. Jack listened quietly, and even his own eyelids grew heavy. The giant opened one eye and looked at Jack. He was not angry. He was just grumpy, the way someone is when they have been woken from a very nice dream. He grumbled that no one ever came to visit, and that the clouds were lonely, and that he had no one to share his golden harp's music with. Jack sat down on a cushion the size of a haystack and listened. The harp played on, note after note, each one softer than the last. Jack told the giant about his little cottage below the clouds and about the green valley and the singing birds. The giant listened, and his eyes grew soft. He said he wished he could hear the birds. He said he wished he could see the flowers. Jack thought for a moment, then smiled. He asked the giant if the harp might like to visit the world below, to play its music for the birds and the rivers and the sleeping children of the valley. The giant thought about this for a long, quiet while. Then he nodded, slowly, and said that sounded like a very fine idea indeed. So Jack carried the golden harp gently in his arms and climbed back down the beanstalk, one great leaf at a time. The harp played as they descended, a slow, drifting melody that made the clouds hum and the stars sigh. When Jack reached the bottom, his mother was waiting with open arms and a warm blanket. He set the harp upon the windowsill, and it played its lullaby out across the valley. The flowers closed their petals for the night. The birds tucked their heads beneath their wings. The river slowed its song to a whisper, and far above, in his castle in the clouds, the giant finally fell into the deepest, most peaceful sleep he had ever known, smiling in his dreams. Jack climbed into his own little bed, pulled the covers up to his chin, and listened as the harp played on and on, softer and softer, until the music and the moonlight were one and the same. And the whole green valley slept, gently, deeply, until morning came again. The Selkie's Song. Once upon a time, on a quiet shore where the sea met the sand in a long, soft whisper, there lived a Selkie. A Selkie is a gentle creature of the ocean, a silver seal in the water and a girl upon the land. Her name was Saoirse, and she loved the sea. She loved the way the waves rolled in, one after another, slow and steady, like breathing, in and out, in and out. The moon hung low over the water, round and white and glowing, and its light made a silver path across the waves. Saoirse swam slowly through the still, dark water, her silver fur gleaming. The ocean was calm, the ocean was quiet, and everywhere around her, the world was soft and still. When the moon was at its fullest, Saoirse would swim to shore. She would slip from her silver seal skin and step onto the sand, and there she would be, a girl with dark hair and sea-gray eyes wrapped in moonlight. The sand was cool and soft beneath her feet. The waves whispered behind her, "Shh, shh, shh." She walked slowly along the shore, and the little sea creatures watched her pass. A crab tucked into its shell. A starfish rested on a rock. A tiny seahorse drifted in the shallows, rocking gently, gently, back and forth. Saoirse hummed a quiet tune, and the sound was like the sea itself, low and soft and never-ending. The dunes rose on either side, covered in silver grass that swayed in the breeze. And everything was slow. Everything was calm. Everything was exactly where it was meant to be. At the edge of the village, a little girl named Neve sat by her window, listening to the sea. She heard the Selkie's song drifting over the dunes, and it made her feel warm and sleepy. She wrapped her blanket tighter around her shoulders. The song had no words. It was just a feeling, like being held, like floating, like the space between one wave and the next. Saoirse came to the village sometimes, and she and Neve would sit together on the old stone wall, watching the sea. They did not need to say very much. They just listened. They listened to the waves. They listened to the wind. They listened to the night breathing all around them, slow and deep. And the moon moved across the sky, inch by inch, patient and unhurried, the way it always does. When the night grew very late, Saoirse would walk back to the shore. She would slip into her silver seal skin, and the moonlight would wrap around her like a blanket of light. She slipped into the water without a sound. Not a splash, not a ripple, just the softest whisper of the sea welcoming her home. She swam out slowly, past the first wave, past the second wave, past the third. The water grew deeper and darker and warmer. 5 stars reflected on the surface, then 4, then 3, then 2, then 1. The ocean rocked her gently, 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 back and forth, like a cradle, like a lullaby, like the oldest, softest song in all the world. And Saoirse closed her eyes and drifted, and the sea held her, and everything was quiet. And in the village, little Neve was already asleep. Her blanket was pulled up to her chin. Her breathing was slow and even, slow and even, slow and even. The Selkie's song still drifted through the window, but softer now. So soft you could barely hear it. Softer than a whisper. Softer than a feather landing on still water. The candle by her bed flickered once, twice, and then went still. The moon moved lower in the sky, painting everything in the palest silver blue. The waves rolled in, one after another, slower now, slower, slower. Shh, shh, shh. And the whole world, the sea, the shore, the sleeping village, the silver seal in the deep, dark water, and the little girl dreaming in her bed. The whole world was at rest. Everything was soft. Everything was still. Everything was sleeping now. Sleeping now. Sleeping now. Good night.